Right, everybody, I just want to check that you can hear me and everything's okay. If you have any queries or questions, you've got the chat function open. I can see some of you already using that, so please feel free to raise any questions that you want to. If you feel you want to ask it during the webinar, then please do, and I will try and keep an eye on them and answer those questions. If not, at the end, we'll do a little Q&A session. As I've said, if you want to speak rather than ask a question on the chat, then you just need to unmute your microphone. So you can ask a question that way. Very happy with any of that. So I'm going to crack on with the presentation. Now, this is about presenting with confidence, and really interesting, starting with the first slide being lots of pictures of me. But as you can see, I do a lot of presenting, whether that's through the networks that I'm part of, at smaller group sessions with mixed audiences, whether that is things like the Future of Utilities with hundreds of people in the audience. Sometimes with a stage, sometimes without, sometimes with a microphone, sometimes without. So over the years, I've watched and I've learned from some of my own mistakes, and probably still learning as well, actually. So the one thing I have built a lot of is confidence. It doesn't faze me anymore getting up and talking. I mean, granted, occasionally I do get some nerves, but I'm not fazed by it in that way. And that partly comes through practice, but also having tools and techniques and mechanisms for providing yourself with that inner confidence to stand up there and present and deliver. So whether you're going to pitch to a small group of people, you're standing up in a team meeting, you've been asked to speak in an event or at a school or a conference, there's lots of things in here that are going to help you. So functions of the webinar, there is a chat function in there. So you can, I'm just trying to get the bars to click up here. We use the chat function. Often we do it at the end, but I know some people like to ask the question in the moment. I'm not bothered by that, so ask away. And we might use that to check understanding. So if there's any questions that you have, or I just want to check what knows, or raise the hand. In your questions, the chat, as you can see in the chat, I've been chatting to all panelists and attendees. Just for clarification, I'm the panelist. There's only me on here. We don't have anybody else working with me on it today, and you're all attendees. So you can just message one person. Let's try and do it so everybody sees, because sometimes one of the questions you ask will be something that everybody else is going to ask anyway. So we benefit from sharing those things. So I would say I would only see the question, and this was sent over on. So in terms of objectives, the objective for this short webinar is some hints and tips to help you develop your own toolkit for presenting with confidence. And I can't stress enough, your own toolkit. So we are all different, and so different things work for different people. These are the things that work for me, and there'll be my stories and my way of doing things, and you might just take little bits from them. Some that you can take and make your own. Some you think, well, that might not work for me, but you know, try it and see how you get on. So as I said, presenting for me isn't a big deal, and getting up there and talking, I think probably when I was a child, I probably wanted to be an actress or be on the stage or something. So if you get me up on stage and give me a microphone, I really quite enjoy it. Now that's probably a little unusual, but having had that experience and that exposure, I can honestly say the more you do it, the less scary it becomes. And the question you would have to ask yourself is that, how much do you really want to do it? And what were the benefits if you do from it? And are you prepared to go through a period of feeling uncomfortable? Because that is part of doing it. When you first get up there, you do feel a bit uncomfortable. So there is an element of acceptance there as well. So my background, leading lots of large teams in corporate businesses, loads of exposure to it. And I said, the more you do, the better you get. But we all started somewhere, and I started when I first had to get up and speak in front of a leadership community. I was new to this leadership community, and my boss had asked me to go and speak, and I really was quite nervous. And just as I was about to go on this mini stage and talk about my part of the business and where we were going, I was kind of a bit anxious about it and asked him any advice. And his response was, just don't mess it up. Although he didn't use the word mess, he used something more stronger. And I still laugh about that now, because whilst it wasn't the most helpful advice at all, because of the language he used and the way he said it, it just made me laugh, and it really diffused the tension. And so I didn't worry about it, and I just went on stage and did it. Now, at the time, I never really understood much about the physiological and psychology of presenting, but actually laughter and humour creates endorphins, which changes our stress levels. So I don't think he did it because he knew that. I think he was just being him. But actually, there's a lot to be said about how you're feeling emotionally and how you're feeling physically before you go into these things. And I'm going to pick that up later when I talk a bit about the work that Amy Cuddy has done. But for those of you looking for more helpful advice, rather than just don't mess it up, those are the things I'm going to talk through. So be prepared. You will always present more effectively if you're prepared. And I know that's probably common sense, but there's a real balance in preparation. When you've done the same presentation repeatedly, you can probably do a bit more on the hoof, on the cuff, just get up and do it. But being prepared in terms of where you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, what you're going to say, helps then to manage any form of nerves and anxiety that might come up. Now, when I say be prepared, I don't mean that you have written a presentation and a speech and you know it verbatim. That's the other extreme, and I would strongly recommend you don't go there, because that creates its own level of anxiety in case you forget something. So it's about being prepared, being confident about what you're going to talk about, and knowing the key points that you're going to deliver rather than every single word you're going to say. Now, that then comes back to your subject. So if somebody said, Hayley, please come and talk to us about leadership or female empowerment or developing teams, I feel very confident in that subject matter. I've got that inherent confidence in my capability, and therefore I know that when I get onto stage, even if I get questions or something I'm not expecting, I'm likely to be able to answer that. Now, on the other hand, if somebody came and said, Hayley, can you come and do a presentation on Brexit? Well, you know, I might have some opinions, but I'm not a subject matter expert. I don't have capability or credibility in that space. And therefore, the level of preparation, and that would be quite challenging. I probably would decline such an opportunity. So, you know, if you're going to speak, you're normally going to speak about something that you know about, that's your strength, whether that's about yourself, your team, your business product, or some form of talent or capability that you have. And it's that capability and credibility that should allow you to be prepared and have that level of confidence. So thinking through where you are going to be and what you're going to do is important. So I always like to know how long I've got to speak, what the room size is, how many people are in the room. If I can, I like to go and see the room beforehand. It's not always possible. Seeing the room beforehand is great for visualization. And a visualization in doing your slides and preparing, I will talk a little bit more about that, but you can visualize yourself in the room. When you actually go into the room, you've kind of not been there, you know, it's not your first time, you've kind of been there before, and your brain registers this, and therefore it's not as scary environment. So when you're there and you talk about what you know, you have a clear message and clarity on the points that you want to convey. Now, most people's attention span is actually quite small. So I would also say structuring your presentations in this is what I'm going to tell you, because that generates the interest and the hook. Then tell them what you've said you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you've told them in terms of wrapping it up with the summary. So if your talk was about leadership, you're saying, I'm going to be talking about leadership today, and these are the common areas. You would then go into more detail with your facts, your summary and your stories, and then you'll summarize on what you taught them about that. It has it builds structure into how you're preparing, but it also has an element of repetition, and we learn through repetition. It also keeps the audience engaged because they know what you're going to talk about. They listen to the content, and then the summary, you can highlight the key points. You go away remembering the stuff that you have told them. And if you plan it in this approach, it may, well, it will allow you to think through your words and your visuals. I'm a really visual person, so I would start when I'm thinking of a presentation with an A3 sheet of paper, and I sketch out the journey or the story that I'm telling, and then what visuals I might use to go with the story. So that planning and preparation before you're even in the room is absolutely essential, so that you've got that foundation confidence, so you know what you're talking about and what you're trying to achieve with that presentation. So now, before we go on to anything more practical, I really want to focus on being you. And this is because there's lots and lots of stuff out there on YouTube about presenting and what you can do, and lots of people you can emulate, and some of them are amazing, but you are unique and brilliantly you, and what needs to come over on the stage is you. So don't try and copy somebody else's way of doing things. Make them your own. Take the things that work for you and make them your own. And that goes with also what you wear. And I've talked about this before at a networking event, and that you have to be really comfortable in who you are and what you are. So if you would normally wear certain clothing to work, and you're very comfortable in that environment, then don't go and buy something specifically special for an occasion where you're presenting or speaking that could make you feel uncomfortable. That physical uncomfort will add to your anxiety and presenting. So I rarely wear something new out if I'm actually presenting or I'm co-hosting or chairing something. I often wear something that's tried and tested and that I'm really comfortable in. Because that shows, as humans, we're massively visual creatures, and we pick up on certain things around comfort. So if you come in an extraordinary high heels and incredibly tight clothing, and you can't sit comfortably, you can't stand comfortably, that's going to irritate you consciously and subconsciously, and it's going to be obvious to the audience, and it's going to be a distraction. So make sure you're being true to you and who you are. And if you're comfortable in jeans and hoodie, and that's what your brand, that's what people know you are, that's what you should wear. So make sure you focus on being you. Going back to the humans being visual creatures as well. There's lots of research into non-verbal and verbal communication. And whilst there's extreme percentages, most psychologists have settled with around 60 to 70% of communication being non-verbal. So your body language, your tone of voice, your facial expressions, me wafting my hands around, that kind of thing. So that's why comfort and structure is important. If you are somebody like me who sometimes talks quite a lot with the hands, that can be a huge distraction. So you have to moderate that a bit. I have more hand wafting if I have got more adrenaline going, if I feel under pressure or I'm slightly more anxious when I'm talking, and I have to kind of moderate that down. And I do that through, as I'm doing now, hopefully you can tell, I've slowly slowed my pace of speaking down a bit. And that's through taking a breath and managing how I'm doing it, and I feel the need to waft my hands around a bit less. So these are things you learn about yourself. I didn't just wake up one day and go, oh, if I change my pace of speaking and I breathe more deeply, I waft my hands around less. But I've learned it, and so now if I feel I'm getting in that way, my breathing controls how I'm talking, and then my body relaxes, and I don't waft my hand around as much. I've just seen that note come up from you, Kirsty. I hate having to hold a mic when speaking because I use my hands. Totally agree. I love the lapel mic and they are best. But here's the trick. I'm just going to get my glass case. If the only way is to have a microphone in your hand, pretend microphone, this is a tip from a TV presenter. So you can use this hand here to express, but if you do that with this hand, your voice goes in and out and in and out. So they said, have an imaginary piece of paper under your arm and keep your elbow into your ribs. So when you're talking and you're expressing yourself, I'm hoping you can all see this, you can talk like this. And that's really important then for the sound and also for your posture and image. And so I totally agree. I would always go for a lapel mic, but as you would see in one of my opening photos, that's not always possible. Some venues, I'm still talking with my glass case, some venues only offer the handheld microphones. But if you can keep the one hand anchored, you can still be expressionist with the other hand. So what else can you do to build confidence aside of practice? Because I also say practice, practice, practice the more you do things. Let's go on, power pose. Now, does anybody know the lady in the picture? And I don't mean the one at the top, because she's clearly Wonder Woman, Linda Carter. Well, it's Amy Cuddy, and if you want to afterwards, I can send you the link to her TED Talk, but if you Google Amy Cuddy power poses, you will get her TED Talk. It's about 18 minutes. She's got a number of TED Talks on there, and she's actually quite addictive, so you might want to go out and watch a number of hers. But Amy Cuddy works at Harvard Business School. She does part of the MBA course, and she was challenged a lot when this first came out, but there's a lot of statistics and evidence supporting this. And she talks about the power pose. Now, I don't mean like power pose like Sadiq Khan outside the law courts in London, doing his hand on his hips and his legs apart power pose. This isn't meant for you to do it in public, and I wouldn't recommend doing it on the stage, and I certainly don't do it on the stage. However, it's about creating that power and confidence in how you feel. If you can stand broader and wider, so arms on your hips, like the Wonder Woman, or arms in the air, arms behind your head, leaning back, they are all expansive, open, growing poses. And they change how physiologically how you are feeling and create an element of power. So what they do is they rise your testosterone and lower your cortisol. So you feel less stressed and more confident. So what Amy suggests is that if you are going into an activity, so it could be a sales pitch or a meeting with your boss, or a challenging meeting with some customers maybe, is to spend a few minutes away from everybody else, in another room or in the bathroom, or where you can, to create yourself some space to expand yourself. So breathe deeply through your chest, but also to give a really positive pose. Now, in the tests and the cases that Amy Cuddy and her partner did, they got people to pose for 2 minutes before they gave them activities to do. And the outcome of those activities, people who posed and didn't, was quite tremendous. And 2 minutes sounds quite a long time, and I can tell you, if you're getting ready for a presentation, finding a space and going somewhere for 2 minutes to do this kind of thing is quite challenging. But I also think the power of visualization combined with this is absolutely huge, and you can probably do it for less. So I might visualize the room, I might visualize myself stood on the stage, and I might do that while I'm in a powerful pose. And it just gives me a mass feeling of confidence. And actually, do you know what? I am so going to ace this. So, as I said, you can find that on YouTube. If you Google Amy Cuddy power poses, she's got lots of other TED Talks as well, and they're really brilliant. Well worth sitting down this evening with a glass of wine and watching a few of those. You'll learn lots. So back to more practical stuff. So where's Wally? Why have I put where's Wally on here? If we go on and talk about visuals, when you're putting visuals together for presenting, less is more, most definitely. Don't overfill your slides. The really important thing when you're talking is that people are listening to you. That's really important. I mean, we could spend quite some time here trying to find Wally. And I'm sure if you are looking at it, excuse me now, the more you start to focus on looking for Wally, the less you will be listening to me. And that is going to happen in your presentation. So if you have got to share some really, really important information, make sure the slide that you're presenting on is clear and concise and has the messages you want them to take away. But what I don't mean by that is putting on tons of text either, because exactly what happens again is that people will spend all of their time reading your text and not listening to you. So making sure that you've got that right balance of bullet points or images, and what text is there is then consistent. And that's what I've put down the side, is that being consistent with your font. You will always know if you're not being consistent with your font size. If you're putting too much text on a page, you have to adjust your font size to get it on there. So if you start with a font size about 28 to 30 for some headlines, and you can't stay with that consistently through your pack, you're putting too much text on the page. But also with the actual font description, try to stick with the same one, whether that's Arial or Calibri or whatever it is you want to use, but don't skip between different ones, because it changes the feed of the pack as well. So once you've found something you like, try and stick with it, try and stick with the colour that you like. This is very black and white here. I don't use black and white in any of mine. If I'm using a white background, I always go for navy or a dark grey. It's on a big screen, it's a bit more subtle. But also then if you are presenting on a really big screen, I would definitely go for a coloured background and white writing. Again, it presents better when it's bigger and slightly easier on the eyes. So going back to being prepared, and the previous slide about visuals, if a picture captures your message, use a picture rather than words. So such as our Boy Scout here, be prepared is the Boy Scout motto, so it seemed quite natural to have a Boy Scout. But the fact that here that I've chose Russell from the movie Up adds a little recency to the slides, but also a bit of humour, because you know he's a character. He's almost over prepared in his picture, and he has a cheeky smile. But the one thing that people will probably remember with the words "be prepared" is Russell, and therefore it's cemented in the memory. The other thing, and here and I put is 1, 2, 3, is that when it comes to delivering, we like things in threes. So whether that's 3 facts, 3 ways of doing things, 3 takeaway information, we like to do things in 3. Well, if you get 5, 6, 7 things to take away or facts, actually it tends to blow people's mind a bit, and then they have to pick the ones that they can remember, and it's either the first couple or the last couple. If you haven't got 3, then you need to think about the substance of the messages you're taking, because you want people to think, well, there wasn't really anything to take away from that. It was interesting, but I didn't learn anything. So try and think of things in 3s if you're preparing something where you want them to take away some solid facts. So here are 3 key takeaways for you. There's lots of other information in here, but these are my 3 takeaways. And then your audience. So we haven't talked about your audience yet, but you know, when you've got yourself prepared and you're physically there, you're mentally there, and you've got great content and you're ready to go, you then got to step out in front of the audience. And I always say that unless you're delivering bad news, your audience want to hear what you've got to say. They're on your side, they're looking forward to hearing you, they're rooting for you, because a lot of people will be saying, well, I couldn't get up there and do that. So they're there, they're rooting for you, they're really, really positive. So it's not that you've got to win this over. You don't have to win them over, they're yours. The occasion, as it would say, is yours to lose, not yours to win. So you're starting from a positive straight away. I think it's always good to remember that when you walk onto a stage or walk into a room to present, unless it's bad news, they're going to be rooting for you. And you may have also heard the saying is that as a speaker, you own the room. So you are in control of the room. Only you know what you're going to say. So if you don't say everything, it doesn't matter. If you say something you hadn't planned to say, it doesn't matter. And that allows you then that flexibility. If somebody asks you a question and takes you slightly down a different angle, it's okay. No one knows, because no one knows exactly what you were going to say. And that element's great if you decide you need to ad-lib something or to do something a bit different. But you own the room. And owning the room also means that you have to be aware of what's going on in the room and not ignore things. So if there's a door banging at the back, or something occurs, it's best to acknowledge those things and maybe say, I'm just going to wait a minute and let these last few people come in and sit down. Or is it possible somebody can just pull that window to because it's banging? Don't ignore it. You own the room, you own the space, you're in control. People are looking and listening to you. So if something's happening out there, acknowledge it. The other thing around the audience, I think I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, just imagine the room naked and that kind of thing." And I would never do that, because the childish part of me is always going to giggle at something like that. But what I do, especially if it's a larger room and you kind of feel a bit like, "Oh, there's a lot of people in here," I look around for what I call engaging eyes. And depending on the size of the room, I might find 2, 4, 8, 10 people that instantly connect with eye contact. They might smile, they might have a nod, some encouragement, but they're rooting for you from the start. And rather than talk to the entire room, I try and find a couple of those spaces that I can focus on and connect with. They often smile back, they respond to your visual interaction. So if you smile, they smile. If you nod, they nod. And it helps keep the momentum and the confidence going throughout the presentation. And then finally, I was thinking, it depends, sort of intuitive, how you feel the room and how the room's going. So you can often feel if the room sinks a bit. So if you're the end of a group of people presenting, or you're pushed for time, you can usually sense how things are going. And I always think it's great to address that. It's like, I feel as if maybe we're coming to the end here, or we are time pressed and I can tell that people are keen to go, and to call those things out rather than try and rush yourself and rush what you're doing. Say, I'm 5 minutes to finish, I can tell we're coming to the end of the day. It's just this last bit, and it helps to refocus and regain people in terms of their attention. So a few more important things on here. So firstly, breathing is really important. That does go without saying, but breathing will regulate your talking. It's not a speed talking competition. I'm generally somebody who talks quite fast, so I have to focus on that. And to get my pace and to keep it balanced, I tend to stroll around a bit, up and down the stage maybe. And if it's quite natural, that's okay. But don't pace up and down. That can be terribly distracting to the audience if you're literally marching up and down. But a couple of steps one way, a couple of steps to the other, just keeping that natural pace, that can be a really good way of doing it, especially if you've got a lapel mic and you can move away from the lectern. If you have to be stood at a lectern, because it's the only thing where, this is where you can really bring in your power pose. So you stand at lectern and you put your hands on either side of the lectern. It creates a really open, beautiful open expanse. If you stood there, you feel really proud and really confident being stood there. That will also then, as you open your chest, help your breathing quite a lot. So the other item, why have I got these two things on the screen? So if you can't find a face to focus on, or you have to stand still and you can't walk about, then I try and do my talk specifically to 10, to 12 and to 2, just to make sure that I am engaging each part of the audience and not just focused one way or one angle. And that helps also, again, with that, stay away from that rigidity if you are at the lectern, to make the comments there and there. And you can vary that. You don't have to do it routinely 10, 12, 2. You can go to 12 and then back to 2, but those are the kind of, try and think of those elements when you're actually facing that audience. And I said, if I can get to the room beforehand, I like to, because I like to visualize it, and I think that really helps, and also to understand the acoustics as well. I've had the pleasure of speaking in some fantastic venues, particularly around Oxford, and a lot of the Oxford colleges are amazing. They don't always have great acoustics, and there's nothing worse than being sat at the back of a presentation that you just can't hear. Especially if people have bought tickets and things like that. So understanding when you need to use a mic or not. Now, I have quite a loud voice, and I make a point of speaking clearly and pronounce my words, so I can get out to quite a large audience in a room. But I think if you've got more than 30 people in a room, you're probably going to need a microphone. And getting that organised, or raising those questions beforehand, giving the organisers time to do that is really important. I haven't yet seen an iPhone or a pocket version of that kind of thing, but I'm sure there's one out there, and if anybody knows of anything, then please do share it with everybody as well. And then as we come towards the end now, your voice as an instrument. The human speaking voice just produces a wide variety of pitches. We're all quite different in how we speak. So there's quite a lot of complex tonality, and you've got quite a lot of percussive ability, and it's how you use that to create your presentation. So really think about this in your messages, rather than just telling a story or talking about a journey. When you raise your voice, how your intonation works, because you can add immense power to it, and you only have to listen to some dramatic audiobooks to understand how this could be. So using your voice as an instrument to add drama or attention to certain words. So you can literally raise your voice and say, "This is important," or you can literally say, "This is important." Now, both are quite effective depending on the subject and the audience, but don't forget that being quiet and drawing attention to what you're saying can be just as powerful as being loud and getting everybody to listen, depending on your subject and who you're presenting to. So I'm conscious I'm giving you a lot here around your words, your slides, and now your voice as well. So my last but one bit of advice is actually about presence, about your introverted energy, your extroverted energy, and your present energy. So for those of you who don't know the lady in the picture here, it's Patsy Rodenberg. And again, another lady to go and Google and read some of her stuff, watch her TED Talks, find a bit more about her. Patsy is a voice and theatrical coach and works with a lot of very, very famous actors and actresses on stage and film. And she is what you might call the force behind the power that is these amazing actors. And she does a lot around voice coaching, but she talks about the circles of presence, and that's one of the things that she's known for in terms of her highly practical techniques that make actors appear so successful to the rest. And it's about focusing on where they are. So introvert, the first circle is about introverted energy. It's a focus on yourself. So it's sort of collapsed and disconnected, and you're speaking to yourself. So I'm just talking about me, and it's a bit like this. I'm not really engaging with you. I'm not talking to you. And the third circle is extroverted energy. I'm here doing a monologue and I'm telling you all my story, but it's all about me. It's all about me. Where you need to be when you're presenting is in the second circle, present in the moment, where I'm talking to you. I'm looking to impact you with the things that I'm saying. I'm looking to connect with you. And do you know, this is probably the hardest thing I've ever done, doing it on a webinar, because I can't see your faces, I can't connect with you, but I'm trying to work in a way that I'm connecting with you. I'm talking specifically to you, and the words and the information I want to share is to help and impact you. And I'm so glad you're smiling. Thank you, Sam. And that's the difference between those different levels and that circle of presence, and focusing on enjoying the moment when you're presenting, enjoying what you're doing, but connecting with the people in the room. And that's why I'm saying, look for these friendly faces, talk to these people, share your stories, and engage them. You're doing it to affect others. You're not doing it ego, and you're not afraid of doing it as well. The same, I can't recommend both Amy Cuddy and Patsy Rodenberg enough, because watching their stuff and reading their material has been immensely helpful to me. So sharing that with you guys, and you going and have a look at it, highly recommend it. So as we are sort of coming to the end here now, a bit of humour. So in preparing for his big speech, Thornton practices freezing in the mirror. Practice, practice, practice. If my grown-up children were here now, they'd say, yeah, Mum, that's what you say about everything. And it's true, you know. Some of us have some natural talent, some of us have potential, but to be really brilliant at anything, we have to practice and practice. And I am not in any way embarrassed to say that sometimes I would stand in front of a mirror and practice some of the things I've got to say. Vanity, no. Feedback, yes, because we are our own worst critics. So we're super critical, and I will pick up on things on myself that other people probably would say it's not even noticeable, or it doesn't make any difference. But I will practice something in front of a mirror. I will see how much I waft my hands around, what my facial expressions are, where I might make my intonations, where I might raise, and try and refine things to hit the audience and to really make that difference. So practice, practice, practice. Also, performing your presentation out loud goes back to that, what I was saying about your brain. I've been here before. I know where we're going with this. I know what you're saying. It feels less uncomfortable, so you can go into that presentation with more confidence. And with all things, start small. You know, if actually your ambition is to do some big public speaking, start with some small groups in the room. Ask for feedback. Get somebody to video you and play it back, and everybody's probably going, "Oh, that's awful." Actually, it's really amazing, because you sound and look different to how you think you are, so it can change your perception. But go and volunteer at schools, go and volunteer at events, and get those opportunities to get up there and say a few words. Ultimately, though, as I said at the beginning, being good at this depends on how much you want to do it, and are you prepared to get through that initial discomfort and to come through the other side. Because everything we do that's new, it takes time, and you've got to be prepared to practice. It's on the rare occasion does somebody get up and be amazing to start with. If you look at the videos of Michelle Obama online from when she first started presenting, when Barack Obama was trying to get into the White House until she was leaving, and that transformation was absolutely amazing. I mean, she was pretty good in my view to start with, but she was outstanding when she finished. And lots of people say she's a natural presenter, but when you look over the years, she's worked really hard on that, to do that. So practice, practice, practice. So wrapping up there, being prepared is key. And this is everything about what you're doing, what you're saying, what you're wearing, how you're feeling. So remember those elements in there in terms of getting yourself organised. It's your room, so own it. You're at the front, you're in control. It's a great opportunity, but own it. Make sure your messages are clear and concise. Tell them what you're going to tell them, tell them what you're going to tell them, etc., etc. Project your voice, watch your pace, get a microphone if you won't be heard at the back. Be present in the room. Remember Patsy Rodenberg. Stay focused and connected with what's going on around you. And then practice, practice, practice. So I'm really hoping that you have found that useful. The chat is open if anybody's got any questions or anything. I'm here to answer anything that you might want to know.
Hi Hayley, it's Kirsty.
Hello.
Hi, I think that's really useful. Thank you so much. I just wondered if you had any advice. You said obviously when you choose the clothes you're going to wear to have the style that you would normally choose. Are there any colours in particular you suggest to wear or not wear?
That's really interesting. So I think first you've got to have colours that choose you. So I always go for bright colours. You can see with my logo and my brand, pinks and reds and blues, and I like bright colours. Doesn't mean I won't wear a black polo necktie, but I like bright colours. Now, if you're going to be stood on stage, I think you need to stand out. So darker colours, blacks, navies, browns, greys, I would avoid. So either, bright, crisp white shirt or blouse or top, or something colourful, definitely. On the bottom half, if you're wearing a dress, fine, but the bottom half you can go with sort of trousers, black trousers, things like that. But always wear something brighter so that you stand out a bit. A colour that suits you as well, that's really important for you.
Thank you.
What do you do to re-engage an audience that's starting to lose focus? In a busy office, I can't use a mic. That's a really interesting one, Anna. I think, like I was saying earlier, I would always acknowledge that if I felt the room was losing pace, or I felt there was attention. So I would always say, should we just stop for a minute and have a refresh of where we are and what else we've got to do? Do we need to take a break? Is that a good time to take a break? Or to ask the audience a question and get them to participate. So whether that's, can everybody put their hands up if they've experienced this situation? Or can everybody share something, a word that comes to mind when I say this, or when we think about this, or when we talk about that, and to get their participation. Does that help? Excellent. Okay, any other questions? Right. Okay, how would you stop your voice from quivering? Really interesting. So, your voice quivering here is coming from further down your body. So it's obviously driven by your nerves and your anxiety. So firstly, I would say to prepare beforehand. So what I was talking about, your power pose, your breathing, your confidence and visualization, that should reduce the chance of your voice quivering. If when you get onto stage you feel your voice is quivering, pace is then really important, and so is breathing. So taking that moment to go, okay, so what I'm going to tell you is that, and to pace yourself and be very structured and take control. Thinking of your nerves as excitement, enthusiasm is also quite a good thing to do. So there's a psychological thing in here about why we're putting this stress on ourselves, why we're doing it. So if you look at it as opportunity and be enthusiastic about it, these are all things that are going to minimize it happening. Once you're in it and it's happening slightly, again, as I say, it's about breathing and pace, because the breathing will regulate the body, it will take down that anxiety, and then your voice will quiver less. But other than that, I would just talk through it, and the next time you'll quiver less, and the time after you'll quiver less, and the audience aren't going to go, oh my God, their voice is quivering. They're going to go, oh my God, isn't she brave? That is brilliant, and stay with you. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. Thank you, Aniela, for your kind words. Much appreciated. Right, well, unless there are any further questions, I will close it there. Thank you all for joining. I will be making the video available, the slides available online, so look out for that. And if there's anything else you're interested in, please just drop me an email, drop me a note, and I'll see what I can do to help. Thanks very much. Bye.